Cincinnati Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan sits down with James and I to talk about free agency and Joe Burrow's first full offseason.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. We've got a two-part interview with Brian Callahan for you today and tomorrow for you daily listeners. And if you're not a daily listener, well, no better time to start than the present. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, free and available everywhere you get your podcast. So hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button so we're delivered to your eyes and ears first thing when we post every day. And thanks for making us your first listen. We've got a two-part interview, as I mentioned, with Brian Callahan coming for you to wrap up this week. We're going to start with a focus on free agency, how the self-scouting went with the offensive line and the decision to bring in the linemen that they did. We talked about Joe Burrow's focuses this offseason. So let's dive into that interview with offensive coordinator Brian Callahan. All right, Brian, let's start with the offensive line acquisitions in free agency. There was a clear focus. At least there appeared to be a clear focus for the front office in acquiring offensive line talent, some veterans, some guys that have a lot of starting experience, and then La'el Collins became available to you. What was the self-scouting process like that led to that focus? And in that process, how did you decide what traits you wanted to target and what kinds of offensive linemen you wanted to bring in?
Yeah, that's good questions because we were certainly focused on it. It was an area we felt like we needed to improve. Of all the areas on our offense, that was the area that we probably didn't perform as well as we would have liked over the course of the season. And in a lot of areas, in the run game and pass protection, all those places, we felt like we needed to get better up front. And I think our guys did a great job of targeting the types of players we were looking for. Steve Radicevic does an unbelievable job trying to get all those things organized and set, trying to have some idea of where the market might be. And what those guys might cost, and what we're looking like as a whole of a team. He does a great job of getting that whole thing set up for us, so we have a chance to drill down into the types of players that are available. Because not every player in free agency is available to us because of a number of different reasons. A lot of it is tied to what kind of contracts they're looking for and what kind of fit they want. But the guys that we targeted are guys that we felt like were guys that had experience. Guys that have won a bunch of games, obviously Karras and Cappa both have Super Bowl rings, bring that type of experience to our offensive line room. That's a huge part of the process. They're built the right way mentally, guys that have had a lot of success over the course of their early careers. Tough, physical, Frank's term, I think, got thrown around quite a bit in the free agency period as glass eaters. And it's a nice little buzzword, but that's the truth of it is we're looking for guys that were going to be, smart, tough, and dependable up front. And then when La'el came open into the market and we felt like we had a chance at him, obviously his relationship with Frank was such a big deal. We felt really, really good about being able to get that done and that he wanted to be here. And that's a nice icing on the cake for that free agency period up on the offensive line. I thought we got three really good, solid players that elevate us to a new level up front. And, obviously with the draft still in play, there's a lot of things that could still happen, but we feel really good about where we're headed in the offensive line room.
Brian, take us to the Monday of the legal tampering period. That starts 12:01. Alex Cappa has agreed to a deal with you guys, or something close to that. I think Schefter tweeted. A couple hours later, Ted Karras agrees to a deal, and it's just like, boom. You didn't have to wait. Suddenly you've drastically, in my opinion, upgraded your offensive line. What was the mood like between you and Zach and really the entire coaching staff, knowing that that's what you wanted to get done in free agency and that you had done a big part of it within, a movie, essentially in a movie time as things unfolded on that day?
It was good to have it happen quickly. It was one of those, sometimes when you get a free agency period and legal tampering starts and it's slow to go and you're waiting and nothing's happening and it gets, we're just like everybody else. We're waiting too. We don't necessarily have any different information than the rest of the world does. And we're trying to get things done and get deals done. And so it was just reassuring that it happened so fast and so quickly early in the process, so that we knew we had made an impact at that position group. And I think that was a really important part of our offseason was getting those things done and not having to wait on anybody else. And we had a chance to dictate our terms a little bit when it comes to getting the type of players we wanted. And we felt really good about those guys in our evaluations. And they did a great job of going out and making it happen with the contracts that made sense for them and for us. And so it was a really positive start to the free agency period. And like I said, I'm always happy when it happens quickly because you don't have to wait too long and wonder what's going to happen. So it was good. It was a good start to our offseason, I thought, and really made a nice mark on where we wanted to improve our team and how we wanted to do it.
On the topic of waiting, La'el Collins was in town for 3 days. There was a fan following that found him out at the mall.
Yeah.
Were you more privy to information than fans were during that 3-day window, or was it pins and needles for you too?
Yes, I probably had a little more information than most people out there. But on the flip side, you never really know. It's hard to say that those things are going to get, when they're going to get done, how they're going to get done, because most of those conversations are happening between agents in the front office, and you aren't always privy to what the up-to-date things at every minute are. You hope that it's going well, and you hope that all the things that we think are going to happen and the things that the players say and the things that we say are going to come to fruition. But certainly wasn't anything where I was jumping up and down thinking we had it done. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into getting a deal done, and I'm happy he stayed in town. I think had he left, that probably wouldn't have been a great sign for us. But he really wanted to get it done here, and they found a way to make it work with the contract. But those are things that I don't really have much say in. I'm more just waiting to make sure that we get the guys we want, and hopefully that it works out. But it's a tip of the cap to the front office and the people doing the contracts here, and Steve Radicevic trying to get all the work done with the agents, and it worked out well. But it was definitely parts where it was a little touch and go, and we weren't sure what was going to happen. So that's pretty normal.
At any point during this process, adding these 3 offensive linemen, or maybe it's Hayden Hurst as well, did you jump up and down? Did you have a celebratory moment where you're like, man, we just got, pieces that are going to unlock our offense?
I just felt like the guys that we, it was disappointing that happy for CJ that he got what he was looking for, but a little disappointed that we lost CJ. I was really excited about Hayden Hurst. I think that he's going to be a really nice addition for us on offense. And he's got a chance to prove himself. He's been in 2 spots and had some production, and now he gets a chance on a 1-year deal. He's going to get a chance to prove how good he can be, and I think he can be really good. I think he fits what we want to do on offense, and he was a fun addition for us. I think that I got excited after watching his tape more closely about what he could bring to us as a pass catcher in particular. But when you look at the offensive line, when we got the La'el done and we finished up with 3 new starters up front, I was very excited. I think that those guys improve us a ton, both in their play and in their personalities on our team and our locker room, and in particular the offensive line room. Those guys. I mean, you got to see a little bit of their press conferences, but those are no nonsense, real deal NFL offensive linemen that I think are going to help us a ton, and I'm really excited about them.
When you think about these new additions from a schematic perspective, you talk about what Hayden Hurst can do for you in the passing game, that there's a little bit of a different skill set there with him and CJ, where CJ is more in line and Hayden Hurst lined up a lot more at wide receiver or slot receiver alignments, and get a lot more athletic at right tackle. And La'el Collins looks like a really good fit for the zone kind of stuff that we saw a lot of last year. Are there big impacts on your plans for the offense, without getting into the specifics, for 2022 that these guys do unlock for you?
We're going to find out. I think that's the fun part. And there's certainly some things that they have strengths that are different than what we've had here. Does that allow us to do more of a particular scheme than another? It might. The fun part is that every year is new. And even if we didn't sign all 3 of these guys, we'd still have new pieces, and the year would start again. And last year really doesn't matter for us, and you do your best to find the things you were good at, and keep your strengths as strengths, and find ways to improve what you feel like you were weak in. But you learn about your team over the course of training camp, and really, probably the first month of the season, you're really trying to figure out who and what you are and what you're good at, and that changes every year. And it's not necessarily always we think we have ideas of what we think is going to be good, but those things can change, and it depends on who you play and the matchups you have. So Yeah, I think that they offer us, they unlock some things that maybe we could do more of, we could be better at, and maybe some schemes we haven't done as much just because of the types of players they are. But again, I to sit here in March and April and be able to say that is I can't tell you for sure, and that's the fun part. We get to find out come July and August and September.
We'll get back to our exclusive conversation with Brian Callahan in just a second, but I have to tell you about BetOnline, a one-stop shop for all things sports betting. The NBA playoffs are here. Will Steph Curry play? Will he not? Will the Denver Nuggets, without their star Jamal Murray, be able to get past the Warriors? And what about the Phoenix Suns? Are they just going to make a run all the way towards the NBA Finals for a second straight year? And will they win it this time? Will they get over the hump? You can wager on all things NBA. You can wager on the NFL draft. We're talking draft with Brian Callahan during our two-part interview series, and we know you're interested in the draft. So get the BetOnline right now. I've used them for NBA, for draft, for so much more, and you can too. So whether it's player prop bets, whether it's odds, whether it's anything in between, from UFC to golf to boxing, BetOnline has you covered. Check them out now at BetOnline, where the game starts. Those signings, specifically on the offensive line, allow guys, that played a lot last year, like Hakeem Adeniji, and not that he's going to be a backup, but Adeniji, Carmen, guys like that, Deontay Smith, Isaiah Prince, to either battle for that left guard spot or be backups on paper. How do they fit into this, and how good is it for those guys to almost learn from these proven guys and see, the standard? Because these guys all got big contracts. Collins, it's his second big contract. It wasn't his first one. So these guys are established in the NFL. How do you think that's going to benefit, or these young guys are going to benefit from being around the veterans?
I think it's great. I do believe that the competition aspect of it's always going to make everybody better. It raises the level, if not for the simple fact that if you don't raise your level, you might not be on the team. And that's the honest side of it, but that's the truth. And, but you hope that motivates guys to do even more than they've done and perform even better and pushes them into a spot where they've never been before. And competition does that for guys. It does make them better. It does bring out the best in them most of the time. And so for those guys to compete and have a chance to really have high level competition, I think it's going to make them all better. And the truth is, as we've all seen over the years, is you have to have depth on your line. And if you don't have guys that can step in and play, get you out of a game, get you out of 2-game stretch, a 3-game stretch, hopefully not more than that if things are going well, but that's not the reality. It's a physical position, and guys do get hurt and they do miss time. So to have quality depth and young players that we feel really strongly about, I think is good. And it's a good chance for those guys to see a different viewpoint from different types of players that, like you said, have been around and are established players as offensive linemen in the league. And for young guys like Deontay and Jackson and Isaiah and Hakeem, that's going to be an advantage for them if they use it the right way. It's up to them to use that the right way and gain the advantage from it. But I think we're high on our young talent, and those guys have development to go still. None of them have arrived by any stretch, but we like the traits that they exhibit. They've all played some. We've gotten peeks at them sparingly, some a little more than others, but you got to have depth, and you got to have guys that can play and step in. And those guys, I think, are certainly up to that challenge. And it's going to be fun battles to watch. I mean, that's what makes training camp fun, is when guys really turn it on and start fighting for roster spots. You see guys rise, and I think that we'll see our guys rise.
And there's Trey Hill, of course, in the mix as well. You got a lot of these young guys on the offensive line. Are they all kind of in the mix at left guard, or is that something that you think is going to be more focused between a few players?
That'll be more focused. Isaiah has established himself as a solid tackle prospect. Yeah. He played well at times for us. He's a legitimate swing tackle. There's guys that don't have the same traits as him that teams are playing with. And we like what Isaiah brings. He's got to get better, just like everybody does. But guys that are playing tackle are going to play tackle. And then our interior swing guys will compete. And, Jackson and, Deontay is going to play a little more tackle probably than guard, but Jackson and Hakeem and Trey Hill, those are our interior guys that are young and competing. And that way you got now 4 tackles at Deontay. Not that Deontay can't play at guard, and if he's the best one, he'll play there. But I think he's got a chance to be a better tackle.
Brian, I think we've broken Bengals media code here, because we haven't asked you about Joe Burrow, and we're like 12 minutes into the podcast. And so
what are you guys thinking?
Well, I don't know. Clearly, we did not have a good plan. But let's talk about number 9 a little bit. Obviously, he's the toast of the town and has been for the past couple of years. But this offseason different than the past two. It's not a COVID year where he's drafted at home and working out with his high school teammates and doing everything virtually. And then last year, obviously, he was rehabbing. What do you think he's focused on improving this offseason, and how big is it, do you think, that he's going to have a close to a normal offseason compared to the past 2 years?
I think it's great. And I think the benefit for him too is even the rest portion of it. I think that gets lost. It was a long season. He's coming off a grueling rehab. That again, I know I say it all the time, but I don't think he gets nearly enough credit for what he did and how he did it to get back to the place to where he could take a team to a Super Bowl. I think that's pretty remarkable. But now that's mentally draining, and then you go right into a season trying to figure it all out, and you go all the way to the Super Bowl. There's a lot of pressure and a lot of things that get thrown on a guy over the course of a season like that, especially of Joe's caliber. And for him to be able to take a step back and take a deep breath might be just as beneficial as having an offseason to work. I think there's, if you think about all the things he's had to deal with over his short career so far, taking a step back and taking a deep breath probably is good for him. And I think he's done that a little bit too, and get a chance to really recover from the season. But there's no question, him being fully healthy, taking the whole offseason, getting a chance to improve his game and get a chance to step back and then come back here and get a bunch of work when our guys come back in the building in May for about I don't know what it ends up being, about 5 weeks together, 7 weeks total. Before we break and get to training camp, I think he's going to be really well served for that. And, there's nobody that works harder than him. And when it's time to work, he works probably better than anybody. So I think it's, twofold. He gets a chance to relax and rejuvenate a little bit. And then when it's time to work, he'll be ready to go and he'll get a lot out of it. But don't underestimate the fact that he had a chance to take a deep breath and rest a little bit and not have to rehab and not have to do anything with, learn a new system and learn the NFL like he did his first year. So I think it's a really positive offseason for him.
I think that's a great point. I watched the I Am Athlete podcast with Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle last night, and Jalen Waddle was talking about how it's really the first offseason he's had, the first break he's had, he said, since high school. Going back to, the summer, the camps to get offers in high school, the offseason programs throughout college, coursework and all that stuff. And then coming into the NFL, you're preparing for the draft and you're right into it in the NFL, into training camp. You mentioned when you get back together in May. Can you talk a little bit about what went into that thought process and pushing the start of the offseason program back a little bit?
Yeah, I thought it was really smart by Zach as an initial idea. And, we had talked to some people about how they handle their offseason program, coming off of Super Bowls and, obviously playing the longest season in history is it's a lot. And it's not just, you can't look at it as just, okay, we played 4 more games or it ended up being 5 or 6 more weeks. It's really a cumulative effect. It was 21 games and it was all those weeks. So you got to add all of that in together. And I feel it, I feel the length of that. And thinking to myself, as I watch teams come back for the offseason, I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't imagine starting right now, and I think there's a mental refresher part of that you have to get away. You have to do things. And we're so focused now. We were so focused on free agency and the draft up to this point, the idea of like getting back and coaching football when some of these teams were reporting, I was like, man, I can't imagine trying to do that. So I think, imagine how the players feel, I'm sure they feel the same way. I can't imagine trying to be back working out in the stadium when it feels like we just left. So there's a part of that I think was smart and pushing everything back, letting these guys take a break. You don't win the Super Bowl necessarily in the offseason, and it's really only 2 weeks. It's not like we're talking we cut the whole offseason program in half or anything like that. But we wanted to make sure our guys had enough time and space between the end of the season to recover, to mentally rejuvenate, and be ready to come back and be excited to come back to work. And it's, that's the downside, if you will, to the Super Bowl is that, that's a mental thing where you reach the top of the mountain, we didn't get it done. And now you got to start all over again. And that sometimes is hard to wrap your mind around, all that work and all that time. And now it's over. And now you got to start over at the very beginning again, because last year really doesn't matter. So there's a mental part of that too. And I think it's smart to give our guys that time and space and let them come back a little bit later for what ends up being probably about two weeks or so. We won't start like actual on-field work with football until I think mid-May. They got 2 weeks of phase one they got to do first. So I think it was the right thing to do.
We'll get back to our conversation with Brian Callahan in just a minute, but let's be honest here. It's spring. And at some point, at least in Cincinnati, if you're in Cincinnati, the weather, it's going to break and it's going to get sunny and you're going to go on vacation and you're going to need sunglasses. And Shady Rays should be those sunglasses because they bring you all the features of $200 pair of sunglasses. They're quality. They look great. They feel great. They're comfortable, durable frames, premium, high-end finishes, everything you're looking for at a fraction of the cost. You're not paying $200 for Shady Rays, my friend, but you're getting that same quality. You're not sacrificing quality. And the best part, if you lose them, they'll replace them. It's as simple as that. And we know everybody loses their sunglasses here and there. I've lost them. You might too. If you get Shady Rays, they're going to replace them for you. So check them out right now at shadyrays.com. Use promo code Locked On, and you're going to get 50% off 2 or more pairs of sunglasses. Don't just get 1 pair, get 2. Use promo code Locked On at shadyrays.com for 50% off your first 2 pairs that you order. And it can be more than that, 2 pairs or more. So if you want more than 2, you can do that as well. Shady Rays, check them out right now. shadyrays.com, promo code Locked On. I say it all the time. There's nothing worse than having unreliable transportation. And that's why you need to go to rockauto.com. Rockauto.com is a one-stop shop for all things car parts. So whether you drive a Daewoo like me, whether you drive a Mercedes-Benz like my man Jake Liscow, they got you covered. They've been in the business for more than 2 decades. And rockauto.com is going to keep you on the road for less. Don't spend 30, 50, even 100% more on the same parts at a dealership or at a big box store when you can shop at rockauto.com in your comfy slippers from the comfort of your own home. Check them out right now, rockauto.com. Make sure you write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box so they know we sent you? Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Brian, part of the team success that you had last season led to you going back to Denver and interviewing with the Broncos. I don't know if you physically went to Denver because it was in the middle of that playoff run, but what was it like interviewing for a head coaching job?
Really awesome experience. You know, I've got some relationships there in Denver. Obviously, I didn't know George Payton very well, but a lot of respect for him from people that I've talked to. But just a great experience to be able to see what that process looks like. You know, it was hard because it's right in the middle of a playoff run, so you're trying to just juggle your time the right way and be prepared enough so that you show well in an interview. But really, the interview doesn't matter because we're trying to win playoff games. But it was good. It was a great experience. To see what the kind of questions they ask, what they're looking for, and then get feedback too. Get a chance to see what that looks like. And I thought I represented myself well in those interviews and in that process. And but it's a totally different experience than being a coordinator and getting ready for a game. And all the things you have to think about, all the things you have to have answers for. That process was really good to go through, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. Interviewed for 3.5-ish, 4 hours. And you kind of cover every topic you could imagine covering about how a team should be structured, and from salary cap to players to how you work with the operations to schedules to it's lengthy, but it was really enjoyable, and I think I got a lot better from it. And it was a cool experience. It's always an honor to be included in those processes. And if some point down the line someone feels like they want to hire me to lead their program, then so be it. I'll be excited about that. But in the meantime, I don't really worry about all that. The rest of those things take care of themselves. I try to do the best job I can here and see what happens. But it was a good process to go through.
And it's not the worst place to try to do your best job. You get to try to defend an AFC title run, which has got to be exciting. So last question for this part. You talked about you're restarting. It's a new year and everything. What's the thing you're most excited for going into this year, coming off a Super Bowl run instead of coming off the more difficult seasons, we could say, to start in Cincinnati?
I think it makes it it's a different mindset coming in because we know what we're capable of. Whereas in past years, we're trying to have our guys find that potential, find that spot where they're as good as we believe we can be. And I think what was cool about this year is we showed how good we all believed we could be. And now going into another year, now it's behind you. Now you've put it out there. Our players have put it out there where we can be as good as anybody in the NFL. And the idea is to see how much better can you get. We know what it takes now. They've tasted it, they feel it, and now it's a chance to really try to push and really try to climb and find that next level that can get us a world championship. And that's fun. That's exciting when guys come back to work and it's like, all right, we get to do it again. But here we know what we're capable of. We know how hard it is. We know what kind of work it takes. But man, what a cool challenge to be able to try and go do it again, knowing that you're capable of doing it. Does that make sense? I guess is that mindset for me makes it pretty exciting to be able to go try to defend a title, knowing that you're capable of doing it.
Well, makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. You were in Denver for that, right? For both runs. And correct. So you've been there on the losing side and then having to get back there a few years later. So you know what that's like. I think you're probably one of the only ones in that building that knows what that's like.
Yeah, that's an advantage for me to be able to share that experience with our guys and what it looks like when you're trying to repeat, when you're trying to get back. We went and lost the Super Bowl in dramatically bad fashion in Denver against Seattle in 2013. Felt like we still had a really good team the next year. We were still really good again, but then we got upset in the divisional round against the Colts at home. We were at the first round bye, number 1 seed. Thought we were going to go right back again, and we didn't play well in that playoff game. But we played well for the course of that season, and I think our guys had the right approach in Denver that year. We had a lot of talent and a lot of really good players, but guys knew how to go approach that and say, look, we know we're capable of going back. We can go back. You got to start over and put the work in, understanding that's the case. But that's not it's not easy. There's no doubt about that. But and then having 2 years after that, we had a coaching change and then still found a way to get back there in 2015 and then finally win it. Was a really rewarding feeling. But we knew we were capable of that type of achievement, and I think that's a big deal when you actually are aware of how good you can be and what it takes to get there. I think that matters a lot versus when you're not sure. I think our guys are sure. I think they know that they can be the best in the NFL and the best in the world. So that's exciting.
That's part 1 of our interview with Brian Callahan. We've got plenty more to talk about with him coming your way tomorrow. We're going to dive into the draft, some philosophical questions, and some questions about some of the individual position groups on offense where the Bengals may be interested. So make sure you check that out, dropping tomorrow here on Locked On Bengals. Until next time, Bengals fans, hoo day, and have a good one.